Good morning, everybody. I'm Jen Thabit, and as you just heard, I lead DARPA's Small Business Programs Office. I think I have the best job in the agency because I get to go out and find and chat with people like you. And I will say that there has just never been a more exciting or more important time to really talk about small business. And I'm so thankful that Whitney and Mike asked me to speak here. This room is filled with so many people who are just ready to help us tackle our problems. And the energy that I saw at the networking yesterday and at the reception, that's the energy that we want and that we really need. Because at DARPA, we know that the next breakthrough may not come from that large defense prime. It's really going to come from a startup, a small business, a team of scientists in their garage, probably people that are new to the national security space. We need that bold and innovative thinking. And so to do that, we're really trying to reinvent ways to help our innovators engage from your first conversation with us to your funded opportunity. And my job is to find you all, to work with you and connect with you and help you work with us. So I'm going to spend just a little bit of time talking about how we do this. And as you can see, I have quite a bit to cover, and I've got a speaker timer that I'm going to try to pay attention to, but I'm probably going to ignore, so sorry, organizers. I want to move right into pathways to partnership. Right? At DARPA, we offer a variety of mechanisms, big and small, to meet you where your innovation starts. When we talk about working with DARPA, we used to talk about it in three main ways. We used to talk about it that there's three ways to work with DARPA. There's programs, there's challenges, and then there's smaller efforts. But talking openly, it's hard to walk in the door as a new entrant and get a large program. And challenges are great, but we don't always have challenges. So it's that smaller effort. Let me emphasize smaller maybe in dollar value, but much more valuable in significance to what we're doing at DARPA that really is going to be that entry point to help you innovate and collaborate with DARPA. So I always like to start off with this to show you how we are constantly innovating and trying to offer a large variety of mechanisms to help you get in the front door. We are continuing to experiment with faster and more flexible entry points. This is what we have right now, but come see me in 6 months and I'll probably have added another entry point for you too. Right? I really do want to emphasize that when I say these are small business entry points, they're not just maybe for small businesses, they are for any innovators, new or current with DARPA, to really find a different path to innovating with us. A lot of times these mechanisms, they serve as market research. They help us test our feasibility. They inform our larger program decisions. Maybe they're even part of our larger programs. So I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes going over a few of these on the slide, and then I'm going to get to what's near and dear to my heart, the SIBR program. Right. Whitney talked yesterday in her MTO 101 about seedlings and the office-wide BAA. So that's obviously a great way to get involved. And I had someone come up to me at the reception yesterday and ask about seedlings, right? So just to sort of double down on what she said, our seedlings tend to be our short exploratory efforts, and their goal really is to move from disbelief to mere doubt. They can serve as the basis for larger programs. We have our advanced research concepts on the slide. That's one of our newest offerings. It previously was in the Defense Sciences Office, and now it's actually elevated up to the Director's Office for an agency-wide effort. And that really does try to fast track, like, what if ideas in emerging scientific technical areas. They are managed by our DARPA Innovation Fellows, and they're open on a rolling basis for submissions. And I will say the funding for that, just for those that are curious, it's about $300,000, which is about 1 FTE for 1 year for that. Pitch days. Right? Like the pitch day that we're here to do at MTO, right? Those are really designed to surface bold ideas and move quickly on promising opportunities. Brian talked a little about the office-wide BAA, and there's lots of other smaller efforts on there from the screen. For those of you not familiar with all of them, I will give a nice plug for DARPA Connect, which you'll hear about this afternoon. DARPA Connect does have a module on darpaconnect.us that goes over all of these innovation entry points for you. But before I get to the SBIR program, I want to spend just a minute or two talking about our newest entry point, the ARIS Marketplace. And I chatted with a bunch of you yesterday at lunch and in the hallway about it. You know, we've heard you that working with the DoD, not just DARPA, can be hard. It can be daunting. I keep seeing all the superhero references around the Gaylord, and so I'm kind of reminiscent of the fact that I feel like sometimes it must feel like you need a little decoder ring to read through a lot of our solicitations. And so efforts like what you see on the screen and pitch days are really meant to make that easier. But we can't always do pitch days, right? We also need to try to also meet you where you are. And ARIS is a step in that. ARIS is our rapid acquisition marketplace. Access is the first step with us, but to truly encourage new entrants, we really have to innovate and speed up acquisition because speed matters. And bold ideas quickly lose their relevance if the tools in place to help can't keep up. And so with this, ARIS is a 7-minute pitch video that is accepting submissions on a rolling monthly basis. They're awardable videos that once you're selected for an awardable status, you enter a marketplace that is accessible for review, not just by DARPA program managers, but by anybody with a .mil email address. ARIS is really trying to help you showcase your ideas in a short, concise, easy way. Right? From video pitch to award, the process can take about 30 days, but I will tell you that we made our first ARIS award in 5 days. I'm gonna say that again. We made our first award in 5 days. ARIS really is the future. We're trying to match these revolutionary ideas with decision makers faster than ever, and we are trying to slash these acquisition timelines. I don't want to just emphasize that it's a faster process. I want to emphasize that it's really a pivot. It's a mind shift to really help drive game-changing technologies. And so with that, I'd like to try to transition to SBIR and talk to you about what we're doing for game-changing technologies there too. Let me just baseline for a minute. As you all may be aware, SBIR is a congressionally mandated program. It's really designed to stimulate technological innovation and foster and encourage innovation in small business. Now, when you think about that, that fits very nicely in with what DARPA does. And a lot of people don't realize this, but if you look at that box at the bottom of the screen, SBIR programs are the largest source of early tech financing in the US. So when you think about what you've heard about MTO yesterday, what you've heard this morning, right? SBIR, an agency like DARPA, the SBIR program just fits so nicely and complements and supports the work that we are doing in the rest of the agency. So much so that our SBIR and STTR program has become a model not just for the DoD, but across the federal government as a whole. So how are we doing this? Well, if you've been paying attention, we do things very differently at DARPA, and our SBIR program is no different, right? We are innovating and flipping the program on its head. Right? Our SBIR program is quite unique and distinct from other programs. We intentionally updated it and we redesigned the program to really help complement the work that we are doing in our technical offices. So we have 4 main pillars that we pride ourselves on with the program. The first is our just-in-time topic development. What does that mean? That means that I don't send out a call once a quarter or once a year to our program managers. Our program managers are developing their topics as the needs arise so that we can be more responsive to their needs and their technological innovations. You heard Whitney talk about yesterday that our PMs are here on a short, limited tenure. If we were to hold off and just do annual calls for SBIRs, we would be missing opportunities to partner with them. So as needs arise, our program managers are working with the Small Business Programs Office to innovate and come up with topic ideas. Now, why do we do that? Well, let's move across the screen, and we see that our topics are tied to DARPA programs. The title of the slide is Innovation in DARPA, SBIR, and STTR programs. And I always have a hard time talking about these middle two because this shouldn't be innovative, but to Be quite frank, it is, and this doesn't happen in other agencies. Our topics are tied to DARPA programs. What does that mean? That means our small businesses are availed of a lot of the same benefits that they would have if they were working on larger programs. In fact, oftentimes our program managers are having joint meetings between their larger programs and their SIBR topics. They're doing quarterly or monthly updates with everybody as a group. They're really getting the benefit and really learning how to work with DARPA. And so let's move over to that third box, program manager centric. Again, doesn't seem like it should be innovative, but it doesn't happen other places. Our program managers are the ones that are dreaming up these ideas. They are looking to solve real-world problems. They are reading your proposals. They are making your selections, and then they are partnering with you. And I use that word intentionally. They are partnering with you on your SIBR effort. Now, what does that do? That helps line you up for transition success because we have a program manager that believes in this topic, has selected you as the performer, and is helping you go through your program. Our SIBR program is so successful because these PMs are partnering together with you. And if you've seen what I've seen the last few days, you can tell our MTO program managers are exactly shining examples of that. They all want to work and hear and partner with you. Now, our fourth one is our SIBR XL, and if you will permit me, I'm going to table that just for a minute and get to that on a later slide. Because what everybody always wants to know is the money. So let's get that out of the way first, right? Our SIBR program has phase ones and phase twos, and our phase ones are about $250,000, and they're about 6 months, and our phase twos are about 1.8 million. Now, I will say, as I see people taking pictures, take a picture, but this is where we start. This is oftentimes not where we end. By tying our SIBRs to DARPA programs, by having our PMs really partner with you, it is not uncommon, and you'll see this in future slides, for our programs to get plussed up. We do a lot of co-funding, and I'll get to that in a minute. And then you can see we have an enhancement or a matching program where I will contribute $500,000 in additional SIBR dollars if you bring $500,000 to the table. Again, something that is quite common with our SIBR program. Now, we talked a little bit about our program and how we're different. This slide is how I am creatively enabling our program managers to use the program. I want to go on record to say that all of the initiatives that you see on the screen, with the exception of the SIBR XL pilot, are open to all SIBR agencies in the DoD. I put this together to show not just you, but our program managers about the flexibility of the SIBR and STTR program. So let's spend just a few minutes chatting about this. Our phase ones and our directive phase twos, well, that's how our topics are released. And I get this question a lot. I will say that probably about a third of our topics are phase ones, a third are released as directive phase twos, and then that sweet spot, that last third, is a mix of phase ones and directive phase twos, where the PM's just not quite sure about where this is going to go. So he will fund ideas that are both phase ones and directive phase twos. But let's move down the screen to the middle. We do a lot of phase twos at DARPA. Now, phase twos can be, let me back up and say that every SBIR or STTR recipient can have up to 2 phase twos. They can be sequential, they can be concurrent, or they can be years apart. So at DARPA, we do a lot of sequential or concurrent phase twos. Remember, our PMs are here on a limited time year, so if we can do concurrent phase twos and help you reach transition a lot quicker, we are always happy to do that. We also do a lot of sequential phase twos as well. But let's slide across the screen to what I think is the most valuable tool that we offer. And again, this is available throughout the entire DoD and actually the rest of the federal government. We do a lot of what are called adoptions or cross-agency awards. Now remember, I said every SIBR STTR can have up to 2 phase twos. They don't have to be from the same agency. So I was chatting with a gentleman last night who had just finished a phase 1 at Air Force and wasn't sure where he could go. So what I like to tell people, as you are networking and engaging with program managers, if you have ever had a SIBR that has not progressed through both phase twos, you are eligible to be adopted. What that means is that in an agency like DARPA, we can reach out to the agency that initially funded you and get them to release the topic over to DARPA, and you can continue your phase 2 work with DARPA. Now, why that's important is for a couple of reasons. One, it's my money. It's not Whitney and Mike's money, and it's so much easier to come to Aunt Jen and get money than it is to have to go up to the director. We do anywhere from 45 to 60 adoptions a year because it's so easy. It's quick. By the time we have reached to you and you put a proposal into DSIP, probably it's about 45 days and then you're on contract and off to the races. Competition was already satisfied. And so basically all we have to do is get a proposal and evaluate it from you. It is a great option at our agency where our PMs are unlimited tenure. So my advice is as you are reaching out to program managers and having those discussions with them today, or as you work with DARPA Connect, and Jess will talk with you about this later this afternoon, and craft your first touchpoint email, put together a bingo box for them. And consequently, this works at any agency throughout the government. And put a bingo box with them where you have your contracts on the left side, and then put like columns of where you are eligible either for adoptions or for phase 3s. Make it easy for them to say, hey, I had this phase 1 with the Air Force, it didn't go forward. Here's a big green stamp where you can fund me. It makes a difference. And again, it's a lot easier to get SBIR dollars than it is to get program dollars sometimes. So make it easy and show them how they can do that. Moving down the screen, we have our enhancements and co-funds, which I alluded to on the previous slide. Right, enhancements are our matching programs. It's currently capped at $500,000, but if you receive $500,000 in outside funding, we will match you with $500,000. And then our co-funds. And we have a particularly active co-funding process at DARPA, particularly because if you think about what we do and that we're so early stage, we really need to invite our transition partners and end users in early into the process. And so it is not uncommon for our colleagues at the Air Force, the Army, the Navy to start co-funding and putting money on our SBIR contracts in order to help speed up transition. Now let's get to the final one. I want to talk about our SBIR XL. SBIR XL is a pilot, and if any of you have heard me speak, you've probably heard me say it's a pilot for the past 4 or so years. That is because I feel if you call anything a pilot, people leave you alone. So it will always be a pilot, but it is a pilot that aims to ask the question, if we could give you some more money at the outset, and if we could help you more clearly identify transition and commercialization milestones, can we help you get across that finish line? Can we help you go from lab to market quicker? Now, it is still a pilot, it is still early, but the answer appears to be yes. I would love to give you tons of statistics, but my friend John is going to come up and speak about our commercial strategy office in a little bit, and I can tell you that commercial strategy has stolen, borrowed, enhanced many of our performers, and they've given them that plus up because they see the value. Many of our performers are first-time awardees to DARPA, and many of our performers are seeing success. We had one small business that was one of our initial SBIR XL performers go from 3 people in 2020 up to over 30 people and over $100 million in undiluted funding. Most recently, I was talking with a SBIR XL performer, and they just received $25 million in outside venture funding. So I think it is a successful project. It is working, and the question I always get is, how do you identify a SBIR XL? And when you read our topics, it will show you the larger award amount, and you will see that it is a SBIR XL. But it is meant to really speed up the transition. Now, I've talked a little about the innovation that we're doing in our SBIR program, and I talked about the innovation that we're doing in small businesses. But, you know, at DARPA, innovation doesn't and can't just happen in our tech offices. We have to be equally focused on contracting and being agile and responsive to help with the innovation. And you heard Brian talk about this a little bit yesterday when he talked about our contracts management office and what they're doing. And again, I'm out on the street and I hear the feedback from you. And if you are lucky enough to get through the proposal process, that contracting process can kind of be daunting and overwhelming. And so as a result of that, we tried to make some changes, and we established a dedicated CIBR STTR contracting cell to try to help get companies through this quicker. So how are we doing this? About a year and a half ago, we stood up a piece of the contracts management office that is dedicated just to doing CIBR and STTR awards. We did a lot of market research with our other contracting offices across the DoD to find best practices and see what's working. And then we put our DARPA spin on it. We've streamlined our application and proposal submission process. We now share draft OT terms and templates for markup upfront so that companies really understand and know what to expect well before the award process. We essentially kind of put the brakes on in order to go fast, where before we release a solicitation, we really think through the entire acquisition life cycle, making sure we're selecting the right instrument, making sure we are only asking for what we need with the streamlined cost template and publishing terms so that we can go quicker once you are selected for award. And it's working. As you can see from the screen, we just completed a testbed pilot topic with one of our phase twos, our directive phase twos, and we made an award in 4 days. That's 4 days from notice of award to actually giving them the award. And why? Because we published the OT terms up front. Because we really thought through what we needed for costs so that we could make this process go much quicker. Our phase ones, you saw on the screen earlier that I do $250,000 for phase one awards. Well, those of you that are familiar with the CIBR and STTR program, that's new. And that's a decreased award amount from what you may have seen in the past. But why did we do that? We did that because $250,000 is the very top of the simplified acquisition threshold. That means I can give you a purchase order, and I can give you a purchase order in a week, as opposed to having to go through the hoops of doing a contract, which may take several months. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I'd much rather have $250,000 in a week than $300,000 in 6 months. That means we get you to phase two quicker. But we're not just stopping there. As you guys can tell, I'm all about innovating, right? And so we're gonna continue to innovate on our contracting process and see where we can make the process go even quicker, where 5 days needs to be the norm instead of 2 to 3 weeks, where 4 days is the new record, and maybe we can beat that with our OTs. But as I said earlier, we can't just innovate in certain aspects. So we're innovating our program, we're innovating on our contracting, but we also need to think through transition. DARPA really sees transition differently. And I think that's because at DARPA, we don't make things, right? We don't buy things, we don't build things. We are never the end user, and sometimes we're the innovator. So we have to stay engaged to ensure that our programs transition, right? Breakthrough research really only matters if it crosses that finish line and it makes an impact and gets into real world use. So we need to be supporting our performers throughout the R&D life cycle so that we ensure you don't just end your journey with one award. So we're constantly innovating on how to do that. And you'll hear my colleague John Spiritus talk about the Commercial Strategies Office and how they're doing that through the Embedded Entrepreneur Initiative and how they're doing that with the DARPA Venture Horizons program. Right, our Adaptive Capabilities Transition Office is really focused on innovating transition and helping our performers find homes within the DoD. And in my office, we offer a transition and commercialization support program for all of our CIBR and STTR performers. We try to engage early and often to ensure that your research has what I like to call the best pair of legs, so you can walk out of DARPA and walk into your next award. This holistic group sustained approach by all of our offices, this support is really aimed at helping to prepare our performers to bridge that valley of death and to, again, ensure that that journey doesn't end with your touch point at DARPA. So how do we do this? Too often I hear from small businesses and non-traditional performers that they received an award from the DoD and they never were reached to or had work or thought about transition, right? And so we're trying to solve this problem through a variety of ways. And with the CIBR and STTR program, we do this through a transition and commercialization support program. Now, unlike other agencies that rely on TABA For transition funding, TCSP is really designed to offer direct, tailored support on business strategy and matchmaking and growth and planning. Because at the end of the day, right, this research, the impact only matters if I can help you get into real world use. And as you've kind of seen at DARPA, we're really early stage. So that's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of work, and that's what TCSP is designed to do. You know, at DARPA, a lot of times our performers are so engrossed in their research, and so much so that maybe they can't see the forest through the trees. We have to help them pull up a level to really see where the various opportunities are for their research, right? This program is really designed to keep that transition and commercialization at the forefront and to help that be a mindset shift for you as you are working through your transition. Now, I push our performers. We do a lot of engagement early and often, and much, much earlier than anybody is probably comfortable with. But we do that on purpose, and we do that because what I don't want is to get you to the end of the program and talk with an end user that says, wow, this is really interesting research, and it would have been great if maybe it wasn't a square. Maybe it was a circle, or maybe you could have made it go quicker by 2x, right? And so the idea is to get involved and have conversations and work with end users as early as possible so that we can prevent those costly pivots and those shifts, right? This requires a deliberate and strategic approach because success at DARPA really can't end with the technical win. It really ends when we get this transitioned. So how do we do this? We offer a lot of guidance from the start. I try to educate our small businesses on the importance of building a transition mindset from day one, right? We help shape the transition strategy. We clarify next steps, trying to help them understand how their research can move from the lab to the real world. We offer a lot of tailored feedback. I do over 100 one-on-ones with our small business performers every year. And that feedback is really aimed at aligning technologies with operational needs and trying to strengthen their commercialization potential. We also send out weekly alerts to our performers that are tailored to match their stage and focus of each performer to help notify you of other opportunities, other solicitations, or even engagement or conference opportunities for you to get involved in. And then we track your success. We track milestones and monitor progress to identify even those small early wins to help promote you. You know, we work with our performers to really try to build a customized, tailored roadmap that offers paths that really can lead to maybe other DoD programs, other agencies, or to other primes. The takeaway, I think, from this program is that we don't just try to support the research that you're doing now. We try to help set you up for that transition journey, right? Our goal really is to help you bridge that valley of death. Now, I can talk, clearly, a lot, but you know, it only matters if I can show you the impact. So I put together a couple of slides just to highlight how this actually happens, right? Our SIBR program, shifting our program, tying them to topics, having our program managers really run it, making our contracts go quicker, offering this dedicated transition support is culminating in early and big transition successes. You know, when I took over this job in January of 2020, I was told the average time for transition of a DARPA SIBR to the market was 8 years. 8 years. That's late to need. That loses relevance. That's too long. And so we really set out to shift that and to change that. And so this slide kind of shows a couple of the recent highlights and accomplishments. And if you come hear me talk next month, I'll have different successes because that's how impactful, that's how this partnership with PMs is really affecting our program. So let's talk about a couple of things, right? Acquisitions, right? There's two key acquisitions right there, Episci and TideLift. Both of those were impactful SBIR performers that are now acquired and continuing to grow their offering. In 2025, Episci was acquired by Applied Institution, which is a major player in vehicle software for both defense and commercial markets. TideLift was acquired by Sonar. TideLift was a former I2O SBIR adoption They were adopted and they were only in our program for about 2 years before they got acquired. And now their software, supply chain security tools, are now part of Sonar's suite of tools. And now they have enhanced their ability to secure open source software at scale. These acquisitions really highlight how DARPA-funded cyber performers really are delivering quickly on real value and catching the attention of our partners and investors. But let's move to the middle, right? We have a lot of additional funding options, right? As I said, DARPA's where you begin, but it's never going to be where you end because we don't make things, buy things, build things, right? So we're trying to help you get other funding. And so you see in that additional funding, you see that big old stamp AppFit. AppFit is a plus-up program through the Pentagon that's really meant to enhance and speed up manufacturing. And you see right on there, Microlink Devices and Lintech. Those are two recent awardees. Microlink got $18 million and Lintech got just over $10 million in plus-up funding to help speed up their manufacturing. And these investments really reflect both the technological maturity of the DARPA programs and their alignment with military needs. And that brings me to the prime engagement. And I always like to highlight this because a lot of times people say to me, hey, Jen, why are you working with the primes? I said, well, I'm working with the primes because the primes really can benefit from working with the small businesses because you can help them cut corners in their research where they can actually partner with you and adopt your technology instead of spending dollars of their own and making a market that we already have spent time developing. So we spend a lot of time not just talking with the DoD, but with our primes. And in fact, this year, we started a new thing. We started what I call my traveling TIMs, my traveling technical interchange meetings, where we try to meet our performers and our primes where they are. We go to a lot of conferences, and so do our performers, and so do the big primes. And so what we do now is when we are at a large conference, we set up these traveling TIMs where our performers are matched with primes, and they get one-on-one round-robin sessions where they can meet and engage. And so far, the feedback has been tremendous. As I said, we just started it this year, but everybody that has engaged with the prime has had at least one touch point additional from each of the primes. So we're hopeful that this will be a great way to spark collaboration. And you know, our work with the primes has been so impactful that BAE Fast Labs actually did an accelerator for us last year, where they selected 6 DARPA cyber performers to do a 3-month intensive program. And as a result of that, all 6 have now been partnering with BAE on proposals that they've been submitting to the government. Up next, our RTX is working on an accelerator and a money challenge, which hopefully will roll out to our cyber performers late fall. Right? But let's talk about why we're here, right? MTO. MTO is a prime example of how our cyber program really helps and supports early stage technologies that evolve into fieldable, high impact systems, right? They really show how targeted cyber funding can enable this cutting edge innovation and move from lab to concept and have real world impact in a much shorter time. So I put just a few of these up here. Vector Atomics and Inflection, and I know Inflection is here because I chatted with them yesterday. They were also recipients of AppFit funding, and the AppFit funding really helped them speed up the design of their atomic and optical clocks. Zepser. Zepser's an interesting company because we invited them to come with us and showcase their technology at CES just in January, just in this last January. And as a result of showcasing and demoing their technology at January, they received over $1 million in investment from 2 different VC firms. Gosh, and then that brings me to ELV. So much I could say about ELV. They're such a fantastic cyber success story. They have, and they are still continuing to raise so much venture funding. You know, before I close, I've talked a lot about innovation and what we're doing. I hope that it comes through that it's not just about innovation, that DARPA is really dedicated to trying to make us accessible to you. And you'll hear that through my colleague, Jess Resig, when she talks about DARPA Connect, which is also an initiative that I run. We're really trying to meet you no matter where you are, right? I think it's important, right? If you have bold ideas, that are large enough to matter, then we have to help give you a path so that we can hear from you. because I just don't think you need to have a Pentagon pedigree or a PhD in proposal writing to have to work with us, right? We need your help to solve these national security problems. We need to hear from you, and that really should be the expectation, that we are easy and we are accessible and not the exception. So I thank you for your time today. I will have a table at lunch if you want to continue further discussions. And I encourage you to use your time here not just to network with the PMs, but also network with each other, because together you guys can find other pathways into DARPA. Thank you.